Hello, I'm joined by our seventh place finisher from Survivor 2, Earth, Wind, and Fire, Rachel. Rachel, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So, the first question that I've been asking everybody is going into this season, did you have an initial strategy? And if you did, how much did you have to kind of change that as the season went on?
No, I didn't come in with a strategy. I never really try to do that when entering games just because you never know who's going to be casted or what the dynamics of the tribe is going to be. So then I just kind of go on with the flow.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about your pre-merge game, specifically how you managed to survive on Ventus, since you were initially like a little bit on the outs and you really kind of worked your way in there, and it was really impressive to watch.
Yeah, I was really nervous at that first vote just because I did hear that my name was being thrown out there. So I tried to buddy up with Kyle because he seemed to have been open to working with me, and then kind of just played this paranoid game with him a little bit uh, to not seem like I was any sort of threat, and hopefully that people would want to keep me over somebody else that could be considered a threat. At that point, I was thinking Leah until things changed.
Well, and then later on in the game, you and Leah really like came together. Can you kind of talk about
Yeah.
that relationship a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, at first we were kind of against each other. And I think even in my confessionals, I kept saying, like, I don't want to be against Leah. Like, I don't want her to vote for me and I don't want to vote for her. But it just seemed like we were getting penned against each other until I decided to have that call. And I was just like, I think that we're getting penned against each other. And we had this like big open discussion. And I think that at that vote, when we got Kyle out, it kind of just like made that trust bond be in place.
That was also kind of wild, Kyle going home. I think that was at the swap, right? How
Yeah.
did that move kind of happen? And where did you like, how did you go from like working with Kyle early on and then being like, no, we need to cut him?
Well, I think even early on, even though I was working with Kyle, I kind of just still felt like he wasn't all that honest. So I was very suspicious of him, especially with him giving me that idol clue and then not helping me with like commands. Like we were supposed to be coming up with commands. So at that point, I think like my interpretation of what I felt towards Kyle and wanting to work with him had changed. And it just was solidified when I had that talk with Leah and we kind of exchanged notes. And it just seemed like we were kind of just being told the same things that I'm after her and she's after me. And yeah, once I heard that, I was like, he has to go. Although I wanted Jimmy out, but after hearing that, I definitely wanted Kyle out.
How did things kind of change for you when you hit the swap? Do you feel like you got more momentum there going into the merge?
Yes, because I felt like I could trust Leah and she's a bigger talker and able to like kind of connect with people that I didn't know, such as Sam and Derek. Um, but yeah, once we hit the swap, I did feel like I had this like burst of energy because I felt like I was in a really good spot, especially with like connecting with Vince and then Floyd. I felt like other people's names were being spread around instead of mine. Felt good for once.
Well, and I mean, if you've listened this far in the podcast, we were very high on your game, like basically from the swap on. And I
Yeah.
had you as my winner pick for a
Oh,
bit. And then I was like, oh no, everyone that I picked for my winner pick went home right after I said that. So I might
yeah,
have cursed you. So I'm
that's
sorry
okay.
about that.
Yeah.
When you hit the merge, did you have kind of like a plan after you saw what had happened with like the leftovers taking out Derek? Like, where were you kind of after that move happened? Because you weren't involved in that.
Yeah. I wasn't involved in that and it was a blind side. So I really at that point I just kind of became confused as to who to trust. Like I had one day where felt like Vince was mad at me because of that, thinking I was thinking he thought that I thought I knew that that was happening, even though I was blindsided. But we worked that out. Um, After that, I really didn't know what to do at the merge. Um, I felt like there was just a lot of chaos being thrown around every single round.
Yeah. I mean, it was very fun to watch, but I could imagine playing it. It would be a lot of stress to
Yeah,
have to
it was
deal with.
very stressful.
Um, Once you're in the merge, who is your number one ally? Is it Leah or is it like Vince?
They flip-flopped. Like I do feel like they were equally number one. Just because I had been with Leah a little bit longer, I did kind of hold her a little bit higher. But I would never choose, like I wouldn't have been able to choose between the two. It was really hard doing trust rankings because I did feel like they were both one. At the end of the game, I mean, I still feel that. That I did like it was hard for Vince to vote for me at the end. So um, I don't know, maybe that would have been my number one.
Yeah. I always consider whether I'm watching or whether I'm playing like Final Seven onward is like the end game. You made
Mm,
the end game. Did you
yeah.
have a kind of ideal final three scenario as you were kind of reaching that, or were you just kind of like, I'll go with whoever?
No, I did want to go to the end with Leah and Vince, had she stayed in the game. And then after she went home, I I mean, Vince kind of discussed with me why Brooke would have been the better choice to keep in the game to bring to final three. I wasn't in agreement with that at first just because we weren't getting along game wise, but I did see that value after he had that discussion with me and that she just wasn't like I guess his interpretation of her game style wasn't that she was on par and that she was more being goaded by Steve.
How did your strategy change after Leah went home?
I tried to connect with the boys a little bit more, so I know like I was messaging Peter, and I was messaging well with Luke a little bit whenever he was online. I was really mad at Jimmy for like turning because he did it twice, and but I had to like just get over the fact that he did that and try to even connect with him, hoping that I wouldn't be a number in his mouth. But I didn't feel like at that point I was. I felt there was bigger targets such as Steve in the game.
You kind of go home in a dramatic fashion because we have a split tribal like merge thing where like three people are safe, but they also can't vote. And
Yeah.
you ended up on that mini tribe who had to vote someone out, and you went home on a revote. Do you have any regrets about how you played that round, or do you kind of feel like I did what I could in that moment and like I don't know what else I could have done?
No, at the time, like I do kind of regret not pushing harder to stay during that tribal council, but I did feel a little bit defeated after Leah had gone. But I still had Vince in the game, and I wasn't really thinking at that time that if I stayed, that that could help Vince go further. I was just kind of what's the word like worn down like
Yeah.
all the time spent in the game, and I knew that those guys had worked really hard, and I sometimes psych myself out and I don't feel like I can win, so I just am like whatever, just vote me out.
I think you could have stayed. I think there could have been a
Yeah,
way, but
well I thought, well I was like you guys can just vote me, and then Vince had told them no, I'm going on vacation so you can vote me out. And when I saw the votes being read, I thought he like did that on purpose. So then maybe one of them would have voted me and one of them last minute would have voted him. And then we put our two votes on Luke. Like I really thought that Luke was about to go home at that moment. And then it
that would
was
have been
tied.
huge.
I
That would have been
know. I
so huge.
yeah. I was like just getting it kind of excited, but at the same time, I'm like, no, I don't know if I have any more time to get to the game. Um, so yeah, when it tied again, I'm like, it's okay. Like just vote me.
Right. What did you learn about yourself or like your playing style from this game that you think you can take with you into the next org that you play?
I guess like continuing to try to play that really social game, and I learned that I am able to be a little bit more fluid when it comes to in-game relationships. So I just kind of adapt to whatever or whoever is in the tribe. So I felt like that is something that I learned that I did well after watching the podcast. So,
Yeah.
um,
You were so good. I
yeah.
mean, we were just floored.
Yeah, I think maybe keeping better track of the game itself is something that I want to work on if I play another future game. Just because, like even when we were at the final tribal council, I'm like, how did they like remember everything that was going on? Like I can't even remember what we did yesterday.
Yeah, no, literally. Um, if you were to make that final three, what would have been the move that you think could have won you the game?
I mean, up until that point, I hadn't made really any moves at that merge because both of those votes were blindsided. So I'd have to go back to the pre-swap when we got, or I'm sorry, the swap when we got Sam out, just because she was a bigger threat at that point. And without even talking to the other people, we just kind of like connected and was able to throw our votes on her.
And then the last question,
And Kyle, I would say too.
yeah,
I mean,
I think
a
that
pretty
that
big
was a
move.
big, yeah.
Yeah.
The last question I have is, what was your favorite moment of the season? Whether it be a fun voice call, whether it be like a funny moment, or whether it be like a game move that happened that you were there for.
Yeah. Um, I would say probably my drunk call with Peter. I don't really remember it, but he said we had a lot of fun, and I think that that was a
Is
pretty
that when you said that you thought he was gay?
yeah. And I was like, Peter's not gay.
He said
I
that was his
really
favorite moment in his exit interview.
yeah yeah. I haven't watched his yet, but I just remember being floored, and I woke up and my friend had come home, and I'm like, I am being tricked by Peter. And I think like even VCing with Vince a little bit, that was fun too. Because we had
Well,
some curse session, I guess, after people went home that we didn't want to go home.
right. You were so much fun to watch. You were so just like we thought you were done for, and then you would just come back, like especially in that first part of the game. So it was
Mhm.
really fun to watch that kind of like underdog story form. I'm sorry you got a little twist screwed. It's
Yeah, I know.
thank you so much for playing, and thank you so much for doing this interview. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. I had a lot of fun.